Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Inside Scoop. I am your host, Julian Lockhart. It's a great morning. It's Tuesday as I'm filming this, and we're finally getting some sun in Minnesota. Maybe you could see kind of behind me, or if you're just listening to audio, you're not going to be able to see a fucking thing. But I hope everyone is off to a good start to their day as they're listening to this. I'm having a great day. I just got out of bed 20 minutes ago, and I was like, I'm ready to film. We're going to talk about my college game day predictions for the 2024 season, also going over my top 10 quarterbacks and running backs heading into the 2024 season. It's going to be a good episode. On my next episode, I plan to have a one-on-one conversation with St. Thomas starting fullback Landon Reed, who's a very good friend of mine. I know him well. So that's going to be a good conversation. I'm looking forward to that. So you can mark that down in your calendars and check that out as that comes out later in August. I was also wanting to mention one thing I got, I would say some positive feedback from, was my first episode as I had a conversation with former Division I quarterback Krzysztof Kowalkowski. In the beginning, I was like, I'm losing my train of thought, and I'm like, I gotta edit this out. Crap, or whatever I said. And I ended up leaving that in. I don't want people thinking I just was trying to be lazy and not edit the shit. I'm like, I want you guys to see me and hear me in my natural element. And I want you to also realize that people make mistakes, and I want you guys to see those mistakes. I'm not, I don't want to make, a shit ton of mistakes. I'm just lollygagging. I sidetrack a lot, so bear with me. Okay, let's get started. So week one of College Game Day, it was already pre-chosen. It's going to be Notre Dame at Texas A&M. I think it's going to be a great game. Notre Dame probably going to be a top 10 team this season. Texas A&M, I would say, falling inside the top 25. So that's going to be a cool one to see the SEC take on an independent. Heading into week one, I'm gonna basically give you 2 to 3 games that I think are most likely to have College Game Day. It really does vary by week, and they choose. They don't predetermine all of these matchups, right? They go and choose week by week, which I kind of like, just to see what's going to be the hot game that week or whatever. Week 2, I'm going to start out with my number 3 choice, Colorado at Nebraska. That should be a cool one to see, maybe get our first looks at Dylan Raiola, 5-star quarterback, number 1 out of high school in the past recruiting class. Colorado, of course, has a ton of hype, around them with the Sanders family, with Travis Hunter being maybe the best overall complete college football player this year. It's going to be a fun one. And again, they get so much media hype. I could see that being a pretty big game. And I feel like they've kind of established themselves to be a non-conference rivalry. So I think that would be pretty cool to see. Number 2, I've got Tennessee at NC State, ACC versus SEC. I think that would be kind of cool. I think both teams are going to battle for that 10 or 11 spot in the college football playoffs this year, and I think a non-conference win against a top-ranked opponent, like both those teams, I think will be good for their resumes and help them choose, maybe who gets that 10 or 11 spot later down the stretch. My number 1, I've got to go Texas at Michigan. Both teams made the college football playoffs last year. Michigan, I've had them outside my top 10, and I know we haven't gone over my top 10 teams this year yet. But the more and more I look at their defense, and the more and more I actually look at their team, I think they could be top 10 this year. I had them outside my top 10 around the 12 or 13 mark. But Michigan, I think, should be really great. Of course, Texas will be a top 5 team this year, led by Quinn Ewers, who I think is one of the most outstanding quarterbacks in college football. That should be a phenomenal game. It's going to be an uphill battle for Texas to go up to Ann Arbor, but I think to see 2 teams go at it who were both in the playoffs last season, and then, of course, the defending national champions in the Wolverines, I think we'll get a lot of attention. So that's my number 1 choice for week 2. Moving on, week 3, my third choice, I should say, West Virginia at Pitt. I know both teams aren't, I would say, a college football powerhouse, but there's definitely a school rivalry there. And again, if College Game Day decides, not to go with the big boys every week, this could be a good option. Number 2, I've got Oregon at Oregon State. I think it would be kind of cool. I hope you guys didn't hear the laughing in my background. I don't know how much this mic picks up, and there's been some people who are just loud as fuck in my hallways at my apartment. It kind of sucks. I live in Albertville, Minnesota. If you guys know where that is, it's like 9,000 people. And I'm originally from St. Paul, and that has, way more people. And we moved into this building not too long ago. It was pretty quiet, and now I'm always hearing people. It feels like I'm back in college again. Ugh. Anyway, Oregon and Oregon State. This should be a fun one. In-state rivalry, the Ducks versus the Beavers should be a cool one. My number 1 option, I got to go SEC at Big Ten again. Alabama at Wisconsin. I'm a Gopher guy, and any chance I could get the opportunity to watch the Badgers get their ass kicked, especially at home, would be cool to see. It's not going to be easy for Bama. Wisconsin, I think, could be a top 25 team this year. Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback. Solid mid-tier Big Ten quarterback. But I really hope Jalen Milroe and Alabama can just go and destroy the Badgers. I would love to see that. Plus, it's Battle of the Big Red, Wisconsin Badgers red, Alabama Crimson Tide red. I would love to see it. That's my number 1 prediction for week 3. Week 4, number 3, I'm going to go with Tennessee at Oklahoma. A little bit of a SEC welcoming to have the Vols taking on the Sooners. I think that should be a cool matchup. Number 2, which honestly, like both of these matchups, I really hope for. I'm kind of like, in terms of what I want it to be, I want it to be Utah at Oklahoma State. I think both teams are going to be number 1 and 2 in the Big 12 championship. This could be a preview to the Big 12 championship. I hear the word talking about how Oklahoma State, all they have is Ollie Gordon, who might be the best running back in college football this year. And then, of course, Utah, I'm a big fan of Cam Rising. I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback this year. And this should be a great matchup. Utah's got a tough schedule this year, going from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, but I think they're going to have high hopes to win the conference outright and get that first-round bye in a top 4 seed in the college football playoffs. So a lot on the line for that one. My number 1 option, though, I got to go NC State at Clemson. We're going to ACC. It'd be kind of cool to see the Tigers take on North Carolina State. I think a lot on the line is for this game as well. I think this could be a preview of the ACC championship, but also I think one of these 2 teams is going to make it. You could also put Florida State in the mix, and we'll get to them a little bit later in this list. But for this game, I think this could predetermine who makes the ACC championship. And if NC State can go on the road and beat Clemson, that would be huge for them. So that should be a great one. So that's my number 1 prediction for week 4. Moving on to week 5. There's a few of these. Kentucky at Ole Miss. I'm not really going to talk about that one much. I mean, I like Ole Miss a lot. But I really just kind of put them on this list just to kind of say that. Number 2, Oklahoma State at Kansas State. Hey, if Oklahoma State can beat Utah and then go to Kansas State and win, I mean, that would be huge. So maybe, depending on the Oklahoma State-Utah game, depending on the outcome of that, maybe this could be number 1 on the list. But I got to go, which could easily be a top 5 matchup. Georgia at Alabama. The Bulldogs and the Crimson Tide had a big meeting last year in the SEC championship. Georgia went undefeated. They were looking like they were going to three-peat the college football championship, and Bama beats them by 3 in the SEC championship and steals that 4th spot away from them. And now I think Georgia wants some revenge. Georgia's going to be great, as it seems like they always are. And I think this is going to be a big one. Again, you could easily have the number 1 team in the country going to Bama, who could easily be top 5, I think, at this point. This is a big rivalry. A lot on the line for this. I'm really excited for this one. The atmosphere in Tuscaloosa is going to be phenomenal, I think, for that one. So that's my number 1 prediction. We're going to week 6. Missouri at Texas A&M. I feel like I give Texas A&M a little too much love on this list. They already get one in the beginning of the season. I'm not sure how much they'll get for the remainder, but Mizzou, that'd be kind of cool. I got Clemson at Florida State. Now, hey, if Clemson can go and beat NC State at home if they go to Florida State on the road. Again, I think that one really just depends on how Florida State's doing, how Clemson's doing. But that would be, a possible top 10 matchup. I don't know if, either team's going to crack the top 10. But this could be, a preview of the ACC championship as well, depending on how these teams are doing. I'm excited for that one. My number one, though, repeat of the national championship, Michigan at Washington. I understand you can't go to the Midwest or the South, every week. And this gives ESPN and College Gameday an opportunity to go out west, go to Washington, and repeat for the national championship. Yes, both teams aren't as good as they were a season ago, but just still the storyline behind that. And plus, I think people want to see Michigan play, no matter how much of a decrease Michigan's taken. Even though I think, defensively, they are still a stud team. Offensively, I'm not sure how it's going to go. When you lose your starting quarterback, when you lose your starting running back, you lose your head coach. I'm sure their offensive line, I don't know much about their offensive line, but I know they had some phenomenal players. And I'm guessing, at least a few pieces of that line graduated onto the NFL or onto bigger and better things. But yeah, that should be a phenomenal game. I'm looking forward to it. So that's my prediction for week 6. Week 7, I've got Kansas State at Colorado. Colorado and Colorado State play earlier in the year. Kansas State at Colorado. Hey, you know what? If you don't cover Colorado week 2, there's another great chance. Kansas State could be battling for the Big 12. Colorado, I don't know how they're going to be at this point, through 7 weeks. Maybe they'll be 2-4, 3-3. I'm not sure. Maybe they'll be 4-2. Who knows? But of course, the media and ESPN, they have got to be suck-ups to Colorado. And this is an opportunity where they've got a nice home game. Kansas State should be within maybe the top 20, I would predict at this point. This could be a good one. And again, if Kansas State is rolling, let's just say they're even in the top 15, and, they're 6-0 at this point. This could be, maybe a little bit of a dark horse for week 7. Coming in at my number 2, I've got Texas at Oklahoma, battle of the newbies of the SEC. Just a big rivalry there down south. That would be a really fun one to watch. Number 1, though, I've got Ohio State at Oregon. We're showing some Big Ten love. This could be a top 2, top 3 matchup. I love the Ducks this year. Offensively, they're phenomenal. In EA's College Football 25, I've only played as them once, but they are a phenomenal team offensively. Led by Dylan Raiola. He's going to be, I think, by far the best quarterback in the Big Ten. Will Howard transferring from Kansas State out to Ohio State. We'll see if he's got what it takes to bring the Buckeyes a championship. And this is going to be just a phenomenal matchup. Could easily be a preview of the Big Ten championship. This game could help determine who gets that first round bye in the college football playoffs and who has to play an extra play-in game. This should be great. And you know what? You get to go out west to Oregon and take on the Ducks. That's going to be super cool. A lot of green there. Heading into week 8, there's really only 2 matchups I saw that really caught my attention. Alabama at Tennessee, which even that to me sounds a little boring because number 1, Georgia at Texas. So we got Georgia at Bama week 5. And then just a few weeks later, they got to take on the Longhorns. That's going to be great. I mean, I think you have the 2 best quarterbacks in college football, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck of Georgia going at it. I think this is going to be just an uphill battle for the Bulldogs, but I think they're going to be ready for it. And Texas, I mean, this is going to be a huge win. I think for either team, if Texas can bring down, I see it as a win-win for both teams, right? If Texas can beat Georgia, who could possibly be number 1 in the country, that would be huge. But if Georgia can go to Texas and win, I think Georgia has, if anything, the higher reward for this game. Because if you can go to Texas and beat the Longhorns, if you can beat Quinn Ewers, Isaiah Bond, and the Texas Longhorns team at their house, that would be huge. Even if Texas, maybe if they're 4 or 5, maybe if they're just outside the top 5, if you can go to someone's house and beat them there, I think that's huge. So that's my number 1 choice for week 8. Let's go week 9. Oklahoma at Ole Miss. I feel like I haven't had Ole Miss too much on this prediction list yet. That could be a possible landing spot. One thing I would love to see kind of going more Midwest would be Kansas at Kansas State. Kansas is an interesting little sleeper pick in the Big 12. I think they could crack the top 25. I'm a fan of Jalen Daniels. I think he'll be a top 10 quarterback. I think he is a big dual threat guy. Very well rounded. I'm excited to watch him play for the Jayhawks and see the Jayhawks actually have like some big talent. It's not on the basketball court. I always think of the Jayhawks as a basketball school, and they still are. But it's kind of cool to see their football program on the rise. So I think that would be kind of a cool change of scenery, right? To just change it up a little bit from the SEC and from the ACC, even in the Big Ten. But number one, I've got Missouri at Alabama. I think Missouri could possibly be a top 10 team this year. And if both teams are thriving and doing really well, this could be usually a top 10 matchup. The more I look at it, though, I definitely would rather have Kansas at Kansas State for the College Gameday Week 9. Heading into Week 10, we've got some juicy ones. Wisconsin at Iowa, a little Big Ten matchup. We'll see how with Iowa, offensively, they're not very exciting. I think everyone knows that. So if that's how it's going to be, I'm not sure how many people are really going to want to watch. I said a voice crack. I said a voice crack at 23. Oh, my goodness. See, most people would cut that out. That's a little embarrassing. And I'm on camera. I'm telling you, I don't give a crap. Wow, I just had a voice crack. I'm almost 24 years old. I turned 24 in less than 2 months. Wow. I used to get voice cracks at like 15, 14 years old, even like 16, but I just had one at 23. Wow, that's crazy. Number 2, North Carolina at Florida State. I like this one because, the Tar Heels, I'm not sure how they're going to be. I think they'll be a mid-tier at best in the ACC. Florida State will be battling for the ACC championship. And again, not only a college football playoff berth, just a first-round bye, right? They want to get one of those top 4 seeds. You get a first-round bye, and then you get a relatively, easy-ish matchup for the quarterfinals. But I think Tar Heels, they're going to want to knock them off. I believe that. They're going to want to do that. But number 1, Ohio State at Penn State. I'm not sure if this is the official whiteout game. I know Penn State has a couple big home games kind of in the second half of the season. I think you have one of the most well-rounded teams on paper in Ohio State going up against Penn State, one of the best defenses in the country, one of the better quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and Drew Aller. This is going to be a fun one, regardless if it's the whiteout or not. I think this could be the number 1 landing spot for College Game Day in Week 10. Let's go to Week 11. I was trying to narrow it down to 3, but there's so many freaking matchups that are good Week 11. You have Washington at Penn State. See, I like that because maybe is that the official whiteout game? Because I want to say that I heard Ohio State and Penn State wasn't the whiteout game, but then I want to say it was somewhere around that weekend. I'm like thinking, well, maybe Washington. You give the welcome to the champion runner-up at home, a big welcome to the Big Ten. So that should be a great game. Georgia at Ole Miss. This could be a possible top 5, top 6 matchup, right? If you want to go SEC powerhouse. Number 3, I've got Clemson at Virginia Tech. Hey, this is, realistically probably won't happen. I want to see Enter Sandman. I think that's one of the most electrifying, most entertaining college football entrances a team has is Virginia Tech entering the Enter Sandman. I think the world and the college universe wants to see Enter Sandman. So I'm putting it at 3. 2, I'm going to go Alabama LSU, a big SEC rivalry. I think Baton Rouge taking on the Crimson Tide is going to be fun. LSU should be pretty decent. I think if they're the top 15 at this point, Alabama cracks the top 10 still, this could be a possible landing spot. I think mainly just for the rivalry. But number 1, I've got to go Florida State at Notre Dame. I feel like these two teams have a little bit of a rivalry, despite Notre Dame being an independent. I think at this point, right, Notre Dame's going to be battling for a spot in the college football playoffs. I think they should be able to get it. I'm a big fan of Riley Leonard this year. Florida State, I think if they want to complete their resume, right? If they have wins, against they play Clemson. Yeah, if they have wins against Clemson, if they're on top of the ACC at this point, you go to Notre Dame and beat them. That's just the icing on the cake. That's the cherry on top. So I'm loving that. That's my number one option for Week 11. But honestly, I would not be disappointed with any of those 5 matchups. If ESPN decides to betray me and not go with any of those 5, I will be pretty disappointed. But I think one of those 5, any of those 5, I think really you can't go wrong. Week 12, Tennessee at Georgia. I think Georgia we've had a lot of brain fart. I can't think of the word. Oh my goodness, awkward silence. I still can't think of the word. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to make up another word. We've had a lot of favoritism for Georgia on the road, but we really haven't had the opportunity to go to Georgia and see the Bulldogs play. So maybe you'd see them play against the Volunteers. Yeah, maybe. Oregon at Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin has to play a top-end team in Alabama earlier on in the season. Now I get to see the opportunity to see the Badgers get cracked again by the Ducks. I would love to watch Madison go and fall. Madison has fallen. Yes. I would love to see it. I actually don't really hate the Wisconsin Badgers. I just like to say I do, just because I'm a Gopher guy, and I feel like I kind of have to. It's like written in the contract. But I think it would still be I think that'd still be kind of a cool game for sure. Number 1 though, Utah at Colorado. I've had Colorado a few times on this list. This is the last chance, right? This is the last chance for ESPN to have Cam Rising against Shedeur Sanders, 2 top 10 quarterbacks in college football. And again, I think if Colorado, I think at this point, right, Week 12, if they have 6 wins, maybe 7 wins, Utah should be ahead of the Big 12 at this point, per my prediction. This would be fun. I'd like to see this, yes. That'd be my number 1 option for Week 12. Week 13, we've got some decent ones. I caught James Madison at App State. I was like, I would love to see. I would love to see that. I'm not sure how it would go, but it would be a scenic. The scenery would be phenomenal in the Appalachian Mountains. I would love to see it. My number 2, Battle of LA, UCLA hosting USC. I'm not sure how much College Gameday would really want to travel to LA, just because I wouldn't say either school really just has a great campus. I'm not entirely sure where USC is located. I know, I want to say near downtown LA. I'm a big LA guy. I go out there like every year, big whoop. But UCLA, that's literally in like Beverly Hills and like Brentwood, Bel Air, that like the western suburbs of LA, like where like all the rich, famous people live. So I'm not really sure if College Gameday, looking now, thinking about it out loud, I'm not sure how much they're going to really want to go there. But hey, I think it'd be kind of cool just to go to Southern California for 1 week, right? Number 1, I've got Alabama at Oklahoma. Am I giving the SEC too much love? I think I am. So Week 13, just looking at it, there weren't many juicy matchups. Some weeks you get a lot. Some weeks like Week 11 where I'd be happy with any of them. This one, respectively, to these teams, I'm not sure how much I'd really want to see College Gameday go here. But hey, I'm going to predict it. It's going to be Alabama, Oklahoma. Week 14, the final week. There's really only number 1 option. There's one right answer. Do I just get into it? I'm going to get into it. I had Washington at Oregon. I had Texas at Texas A&M, which would be kind of cool to see that Texas rivalry, right? 2 best teams in Texas. It's going to be Michigan and Ohio State. Everyone knows it. That is the best rivalry in college football. The energy, the environment, the atmosphere at Ohio State that weekend is going to be through the roof. I love it. Michigan has won the past 3 years. Michigan has made 3 consecutive college football appearances. Ohio State has had a little bit of a drought. I think this year they're going to be the favorites in this game. They have home field advantage. It's going to be a big day for Ryan Day. I just made that one up just now on the spot. If you're still here listening, I mean, I think you have to laugh at this point. I hope I made you laugh throughout this first segment. Anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for this first segment. Now let's get into my top 10 quarterbacks heading into 2024. Honorable mention: Noah Fafita of Arizona. I think he is just going to be a true sophomore, so he's not even going to be draft eligible yet, I don't think. And then I have Cam Ward of Miami. Coming in at number 10, I got Caden Salter of Liberty. See, I think he could help Liberty not only win their conference, maybe sneak into the 12th spot in the college football playoffs. However, per my prediction, I think they'll probably have to play either a Texas or an Oregon. Or if somehow one of those two teams upsets Georgia or Ohio State, they'd probably get that 5 seed. So I think it would be a short and sweet college football playoff appearance for Liberty. But hey, Caden Salter coming off of just shy of 3,000 yards, 32 touchdowns through the air, adding another 12 on the ground, over 1,000 rushing yards. I mean, he's a very good quarterback. I had to put him in the top 10. Number 9, I'm going to go Jalen Daniels of Kansas. His 2022 stats, he was injured in 2023, so I'm not going to put those. I mean, he had 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns through the air. I think he's due for a breakout year in Kansas. So, and I think, Kansas, I'm not going to predict them in the Big 12 championship, but I think they are going to be the dark horses of the Big 12 this year. So we'll see how that goes. Number 8, I've got Cameron Rising of Utah. He was injured also in 2023. His 2022 stats were pretty solid. 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns. Utah, I think, is the best team in the Big 12. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback. He's going to have a lot of pressure to be a top 10 quarterback and lead them, I think, to a college football playoff berth, and also with expectations of winning the Big 12, getting that first round bye, and I think he's experienced enough and ready to do so. Number 7, Riley Leonard, transfer from Duke. He's a guy who can do it all. He can pass, he can throw. Those are the two same things. I'm just now realizing he can pass and he can run. He can do it all efficiently. In 2022, he had just under 3,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and then he also added on 700 yards on the ground, 13 touchdowns as well. Now you put him on Notre Dame, a much better team than Duke. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think if I had to choose a quarterback outside my top 5 that I think could end up in the top 5 at the end of the year, I think it would be Riley Leonard. Number 6, I've got Jackson Dart. Ole Miss is going to have a great offense this year. I think they're going to be the third best team in the big SEC. That's not actually a conference. You could call it that big SEC though, especially with the powerhouses they have. I mean, it's just the amount of front end talent, top end talent that the SEC has is phenomenal. It's impeccable. And Jackson Dart, I think he has a possible breakout year coming up here pretty soon. So we'll see how we can lead Ole Miss in 2024. Now my top 5. I've got to go Shedeur Sanders at 5. I think it's a little much to say he's any higher than that. I think he's a good quarterback, though. I think he's proved that, he was able to go from FCS to the FBS, and not only that, but, we saw glimpses of a great quarterback. 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns through the air a season ago. I think for the most part, right, in terms of the passing and the receiving collar, that was not the issue last year. You have Travis Hunter, who might be the best receiver in football. Colorado, if they can improve that offensive line, which I've heard they may have. I haven't followed them too much yet. But I know that they had some pretty big recruits come in from what I heard. So if they can improve that offensive line, I think we could see a good season from Shedeur Sanders. I think it's a little ridiculous that he is tied for the highest overall quarterback in college football, 25. Honestly, no disrespect to the guy. Obviously, he doesn't make that decision of what his overall is, but I think everyone kind of knows he's not actually a 93. He's probably more like a 90. Number 4, Jalen Milroe. What not to like about this guy? He is an athletic stud. All I'm seeing about him right now is just how hard he is to sack in college football 25. I mean, he is a unit. He's huge. He's built like a linebacker. I love to see him. I think he was just a sophomore last year. So now he's going into his true junior year, coming off of 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, also adding another 12 on the ground, 500 rushing yards as well. He's going to be a fun quarterback to see in Alabama. So I got to put him in my top 5. Number 3, I've got Dylan Gabriel, the best quarterback in the Big Ten. At Oklahoma, he threw for 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns. Now you give him a better offense, a better offensive line. Dylan Gabriel, I think, could possibly go for 4,000 yards this year. I think we're going to see him crack 30-plus touchdowns. It's going to be a phenomenal year for the Ducks, and I'm a big fan of Gabriel. So I'm going to put him at 3. Number 2, I got to go Quinn Ewers of the Texas Longhorns. 3,500 yards last year, 22 touchdowns. You get Isaiah Bond transferring in, who I think is going to be his number 1 target. I'm a fan of the Longhorns. I think they're going to do well. I think they are going to definitely aim to win the SEC, right? First year in it, they're the new guy. But I think they're going to try to, overcome Georgia, overcome Alabama, overcome Ole Miss, and really make a run for it. And Quinn Ewers is going to be that guy. Also, Arch Manning, probably the best backup quarterback in college football. I know in the video game he was rated like 88 overall. I think that is so crazy. Or maybe 87. I'm not entirely sure, but mid to high 80s. I think that's so crazy how you have a backup quarterback as good as Arch Manning is. And we really haven't even seen much of him. Maybe in practice, scout team, whatever. But it's been the Quinn Ewers show. So I think as long as he could stay healthy, Texas will be great. Even if he does get injured, it's kind of nice to see that Texas has a really nice insurance marker in Arch Manning, who could easily take over and I think still be productive. Number 1, Carson Beck, I think is pretty obvious. He threw for almost 4,000 yards, 24 touchdowns a season ago. You see, I'm not sure statistically how great he's going to be. You lose Ladd McConkey, who I was a fan of. Brock Bowers, the best tight end in football, probably the best tight end prospect since Kyle Pitts out of Florida a few years ago. But Georgia, Kirby Smart, I think, is the best coach in football at this point. And I'm a fan of Carson Beck. He's experienced. He is also the number 1, tied with Shedeur Sanders, number 1 rated quarterback on College Football 25. I don't want to keep resulting back to that video game, but I think that those ratings do matter. So he's my number 1 quarterback heading into 2024. Should we do running backs? We got time for running backs, right? We're doing 1 episode a week. And we're at like the 30-ish minute mark at this point. So let's do running backs. Honorable mention, Damian Martinez for Oregon State, who transferred there. Nicholas Singleton for Penn State. Cracking the number 10. I got to go Tosh Brooks of Texas Tech. A big power back. Only had 10 touchdowns last year. Texas Tech isn't exactly a big football program. I can only name you 1 player who's come out of Texas Tech, and that's Patrick Mahomes. I think Taj Brooks, though, is a solid running back. He's big. He's strong. I think we could see his touchdowns increase this year, especially if they can get to the goal line. All things good for Brooks. Number 9, Trevor Etienne, transferring to the Bulldogs from Florida. He wasn't necessarily, I think he split the running back carries a season ago. Because he only finished with 750 yards, 8 touchdowns. But I think now that he's the primary back in a Georgia Bulldog offense, I think he's going to rush for over 1,000 yards. He's going to run into the end zone more than 10 times. In terms of, statistics, fantasy football, if you guys play college fantasy football, which I've only played once. I played it a few years back. No, not even a few years, probably like 6 or 7 years back. And it was really fun. It's a lot of highs. There's just so many guys who produce. Every player gets 20, 30 points, it seems. There's just so much offense in college football. I love it. This guy, actually, I think his production is going to go up. Etienne, related to Travis Etienne? Yeah. Running back for Jacksonville? Yeah, he should be pretty good. Why do I feel like that's not his name? I got to look this up real quick. Oh, my goodness. Travis Etienne. Why does that just seem off to me? I got to look this up on my phone. I'm not messing up my computer. I have like a beautiful split screen right now between my notes and then the recording. Don't mind me. Don't mind me. I know. I'm sorry. You're not paying attention to you guys. Yeah, Travis Etienne. Okay. I don't know. I don't know why I was thinking like that just wasn't his name. I follow the NFL a lot too, and I've had him. I think I've literally had him on my fantasy football team before. Yeah, I don't know why I'm tripping. But yes, his younger brother at Georgia should be great. Number 8, I'm going to go Devin Neal of Kansas. He had a big year last year, 1,280 yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. I think him and Jalen Daniels might be underrated maybe a top 10, top 5 QB RB duo this year. Number 4, Jay Knott at Cal. He had a big year last year, 1,300 yards, 12 rushing touchdowns. Yeah, very complete back, I would say. One of the better rushers. Cal's going to get a good one. By no means is Cal going to be a good team this year overall, but hey, I think they'll get some attention with having Ott in their backfield. Ashton Jeanty, I think that's how I'm pronouncing it, right? Boise State. He had 1,900 all-purpose yards last year, 19 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Might be the best and complete overall running back outside the top 5. Hey, Boise State has been a solid program. I feel like, year after year. So I think, having a top 10 running back, that's going to be pretty good for them. Now into the number 5. Amarian Hampton out of North Carolina. He's going to be their big backbone in that offense. He had 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns a season ago with Drake May at quarterback. I always think it's interesting to predict whether you think those numbers are going to go up or down, because it's like you would think, well, logically, if you have a quarterback who's throwing it more, you're going to run it more this year since you're not going to have that quarterback. But also sometimes how football works is just if you have good receivers around you, good quarterback around you, even if you're a running back, even if they're still throwing it a lot, you're still going to get a lot of offensive yards if you're a running back. So I don't know if those numbers are going to go up or down. I would presume that's a lot. 1,500 yards, 15 rushing touchdowns. I'd presume that number goes down for the Tar Heels. But he definitely cracks the top 5. Number 4, TreVeyon Henderson out of Ohio State. I think he was one of the best running backs in the Big Ten behind Blake Corum. He'd had just under 1,000 yards, 11 rushing touchdowns. I think you still have to put him on this list, but it's crazy. He is the number 2 running back in Ohio State. Michigan last year with Corum and Edwards had the best running back duo. Now it's Ohio State. And having Henderson, who was literally the starter a season ago at Ohio State, will be pushed back, I think is pretty crazy. So he's my number 4. Production-wise, I'm not sure how much he's really going to get. But still has expectations, I think, to produce. I think we're going to have a good season out of Henderson. Number 3, I got to go Donovan Edwards. Was the backup to Blake Corum in Michigan last year. He had a really good, I want to say, was it a national, either the semis or the national championship game? He had a really big game. Donovan Edwards, he's experienced. And I think the funny thing is, too, I want to say he had... has had 2 really good years, so I think he's been the backup to Corum. In 2022-2023, he combined 1,500 rushing yards, 12 rushing touchdowns. Those stats aren't anything phenomenal. They're nothing that's really going to, catch my attention. But now that you give him the entire backfield to himself, right, this is his moment to shine. I think he's going to crack the top 3. He's been waiting for this. This is going to be a big moment for Donovan Edwards in the Michigan Wolverines offense. Number 1 and 2 is tough. I think if Judkins didn't have Henderson to share carries with, I think he'd be a number 1. Ollie Gordon, I have at my number 1. So we'll go Judkins. Sorry to spoil that. I'm just realizing. Judkins, number 1. Quinshon Judkins out of Ohio State, transferring from Ole Miss. He had 1,100 yards, 15 rushing touchdowns a season ago. Transfers to Ohio State. I think if Henderson wasn't there, or if he were to get injured and not play much of the year, I think Judkins will be by far the number 1 running back. But I have also a lot of love for Ollie Gordon, too. Look at these statistics. 1,700 rushing yards, 21 rushing touchdowns. I mean, running backs who are dual threats, right? Guys who can catch the ball and rush the ball efficiently sometimes don't even get these stats. He is Oklahoma State's offense. And what I love about these running backs, too, I feel there's a lot of younger running backs. Like, I think Gordon and Judkins are both true juniors. So if they want to return, I think, for another year, in 2025, they can. Anyway, Judkins number 2 out of Ohio State. He would be my number 1 if Henderson wasn't a factor. But Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State has to be my number 1 running back. And Oklahoma State, I remember their Chuba Hubbard days, who now I think is still in Carolina, the Panthers in the NFL. He was a very good running back for Oklahoma State. So now you get Gordon. I think he could possibly, if he does enter his name in the draft, I think he could easily be a first rounder. A lot of good things to see for Gordon. I'm not sure if he's going to top 1,700 yards, 21 rushing touchdowns. That's a big mark to meet again. But if anyone's going to do that, I think it's going to be him. Well, anyway, thanks for tuning in to Season 1, Episode 2 of The Inside Scoop. Next time, you will get to watch a one-on-one conversation with me and Division I fullback out of University of St. Thomas, Landon Reed. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have a great conversation. I'm really looking forward to it myself, and I hope that reflects on you as well. Have a blessed day, everyone, and I will talk to you later.